Mind trigger, 27 psychological tactics that make people do exactly what you want. Part 3, making them act without knowing why. Tactics 19 to 27. Parts 1 and 2 operated above the surface. You learn to read people, then to shape conversations. But there is a deeper layer, one where influence doesn't announce itself at all, where behavior is triggered not by words or arguments, but by forces the other person cannot name, cannot see, and cannot consciously resist. This is the territory of the unconscious. Tread carefully and pay attention. Tactic number 19, the identity mirror. Make them see themselves in the person you need them to be. What it is, people do not make decisions based on who they are. They make decisions based on who they believe they are. The identity mirror is the practice of subtly reflecting back to someone a specific version of their own identity. The version that makes your desired action feel natural and consistent for them to take. You are not lying to them about who they are. You are highlighting a truth they already hold about themselves and making that truth the dominant lens through which they see the current decision. The psychology behind it. Identity is the most powerful driver of behavior that psychology has ever identified. More powerful than incentives, more powerful than fear, more powerful than logic. When a course of action is consistent with someone's self-concept, with the story they tell about who they are, they pursue it with energy and commitment. When it contradicts that self-concept, they resist it instinctively, regardless of the external rewards on offer. This is why the most effective political campaigns don't argue policies. They argue identity. People like us believe this is what we stand for. They are not appealing to the voter's opinion. They are appealing to their self-concept. The behavior that follows, the vote, is simply the natural expression of the identity that has been activated. The same principle works in every human interaction. Activate the right identity, and the behavior follows automatically. The person isn't being persuaded. They are simply being themselves, the version of themselves that you just made vivid. Real-life example. A high school teacher named Mr. Okafor had a student, Jordan, who was brilliant but had completely disengaged from academics. Jordan came to school, sat through classes, and did the minimum to avoid failing. He had decided, somewhere along the way, that academics were not his identity. Most teachers had accepted this. Mr. Okafor didn't argue with the belief. He reflected a different identity instead. After Jordan produced one genuinely insightful comment in class, almost by accident, Mr. Okafor pulled him aside afterward and said quietly, "That analysis you made in there today, I don't want to embarrass you by saying it in front of the class, but that was the kind of thinking I see in students who go on to do something significant. I don't know if you know that about yourself, but I do." He said nothing else. He made no demands. He asked for nothing. Jordan submitted a full, thoughtful essay the following week, his first in 2 years. He didn't do it because he was incentivized. He did it because a trusted adult had reflected back an identity, a person who thinks significantly, and Jordan found himself unable to act inconsistently with it. The mirror had been held up. The behavior aligned to what it reflected. How to use it? Step by step. Step 1. Identify the identity that makes your desired action natural. Ask yourself, what kind of person would naturally do what I'm asking? What self-concept makes this the obvious choice? A generous person, a leader, a professional, a loyal friend, an innovator. Name the identity clearly in your own mind first. Step 2. Find evidence of that identity in the person's actual behavior. This must be genuine. You are not inventing an identity. You are highlighting a real one. Find a moment, a quality, a past action where they genuinely express the identity you want to activate. Fabricated reflection destroys. Trust the moment it's detected. Step 3. Reflect it back, specifically and sincerely. Don't say, "You're such a generous person." That's generic. Say, "The way you handled that situation with your colleague last month, That was genuinely generous. That's not something everyone would do. Specificity makes the reflection land with weight. Step 4. Connect the identity to the desired action implicitly. You do not need to say, therefore, because you're generous, you should. The connection should be implied, not stated. Simply making the identity vivid and present in the person's mind creates the pull toward identity-consistent behavior automatically. Step 5. Step back and let the identity do the work. Once you held up the mirror, stop. Don't press. The identity, once activated, motivates from within. External pressure at this point will disrupt the process by making the person feel manipulated rather than understood. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. Be alert when someone suddenly begins telling you, with unusual specificity and warmth, who you are. When they describe you as particularly brave or generous or principled, pay attention to what request follows. Identity activation often precedes an ask, and the ask is designed to feel consistent with the identity that was just made vivid. Ask yourself, is this an accurate reflection of me, or is it a curated version designed to make a specific action feel inevitable? You are allowed to be the judge of your own identity. Tactic number 20, the scarcity signal. Make it rare and watch them want it more. What is? Human beings do not want things in proportion to their objective value. They want things in proportion to their perceived availability. The scarcity signal is the deliberate, honest communication of limited availability, of time, of access, of opportunity, of your own attention, in a way that transforms ordinary offerings into urgent ones. Scarcity is not about lying about supply. It is about making the truth of limitation visible, because the brain only assigns urgency to what it believes it might lose. The psychology behind it. Scarcity triggers one of the most ancient and automatic responses in the human brain, the fear of missing out. This response evolved in environments where resources were genuinely scarce, where failing to act when something was available meant losing it entirely. The emotional urgency this produced was adaptive then. It remains neurologically active now, even in environments where almost nothing is truly scarce. What this means in practice: the brain does not distinguish well between genuine scarcity and perceived scarcity. The emotional response, urgency, heightened desire, faster decision-making, is largely the same. And that emotional response bypasses the rational evaluation process that would otherwise ask, do I actually need this? Is this actually the right choice? Scarcity also elevates perceived value through a separate mechanism. We use availability as a proxy for quality. If something is rare, we assume it is because it is desirable. If it is desirable, it must be good. This reasoning is often circular, but it is nearly universal. Real-life example. An independent consultant named Rebecca had been undercharging for years, partly because she was afraid clients would leave if she raised her rates. She decided to test the scarcity principle deliberately. She restructured her practice to take on a maximum of 4 clients at any given time, and she communicated this clearly on her website and in initial conversations. I work with 4 clients at a time, so I can give each one full focus. I have one opening right now. 2 things happened. First, clients who had previously stalled on engaging her suddenly moved quickly. The open slot felt finite. Second, and more surprisingly, her perceived value increased dramatically without her changing anything else about her service. Prospects assumed, correctly, from their perspective, that limited availability signaled high demand, which signaled exceptional quality. Within 6 months, she had a waiting list. Her rate had increased by 40%, and she was working with better clients who took the engagement more seriously, because they had competed, however mildly, for access. She hadn't manufactured scarcity. She had simply made an existing truth. She really did work with only 4 clients. visible and explicit. How to use it? Step by step. Step 1. Make the scarcity real wherever possible. Genuine scarcity is far more powerful than manufactured scarcity and far more ethical. If you actually have limited time, availability, or capacity, communicate that clearly. Don't hide it in modesty. Make it explicit. Step 2. Communicate scarcity calmly, not desperately. Scarcity communicated with urgency or pressure backfires. It feels like a sales tactic and activates skepticism. Communicated calmly and matter-of-factly, it activates desire without raising defenses. I have one spot available this quarter. Said evenly is far more powerful than you need to decide quickly or you'll miss out. Step 3. Be specific. Limited availability is abstract and activates skepticism. I have one opening in March is concrete and activates urgency. Specificity makes scarcity feel real because real things are specific. Step 4. Apply scarcity to access, not just products. Scarcity of your attention is often more powerful than scarcity of what you're offering. Being genuinely selective about who you work with, spend time with, or engage with elevates your perceived value in ways that no marketing tactic can replicate. Step 5. Never manufacture false scarcity. Only 3 left. When there are 300 is not scarcity, it is deception. And detected deception destroys all trust permanently. Use scarcity only where it is genuine. There is almost always a genuine version to be found. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. Urgency and scarcity are among the most commonly manufactured emotional states in sales and marketing. Limited time offer. Only 2 remaining. This price expires tonight. Before making any significant decision under perceived scarcity, ask 2 questions. Is this scarcity actually real? And would I want this thing as much if it were freely available? If the answer to either question gives you pause, slow down. Urgency imposed from outside is designed to prevent you from thinking clearly. Your best response is always to think clearly. Tactic number 21. The social proof engine. Let the crowd do your persuading. What it is? No single voice, no matter how authoritative, is as persuasive as the perceived consensus of a crowd. The social proof engine is the practice of making visible the fact that others, especially others the target person respects or identifies with, have already made the choice you want them to make. When a person is uncertain, they look to others to determine the correct course of action. When you control what they see others doing, you control the conclusion they reach. The psychology behind it. Social proof is one of Robert Cialdini's foundational principles of influence, and it is rooted in the most basic survival logic. In situations of uncertainty, following the behavior of the group is almost always safer than striking out alone. This heuristic served our ancestors extremely well in genuinely dangerous, genuinely uncertain environments. It continues to operate with full force in modern contexts that are neither dangerous nor genuinely uncertain. The brain essentially asks, when facing an unfamiliar choice, what are people like me doing in this situation? The answer to that question carries enormous weight, far more weight than logic, data, or individual recommendation. Because the crowd represents aggregated experience and judgment that the individual cannot replicate alone. This is why reviews, testimonials, endorsements, and case studies are among the most effective influence tools ever devised. They are all answers to the same question. What are people like me doing? Real-life example. A new restaurant opened in a medium-sized city. The owners knew the first few weeks would be critical. If the place looked empty, passers-by wouldn't come in. They had limited marketing budget and no existing reputation. They did something simple and ingenious. For the first 2 weeks, they gave significant discounts to 20 friends and extended family, reserving every table, every night, from 6 to 8 p.m. The restaurant was visibly full during peak hours. Lines occasionally formed outside. People walking past saw a full restaurant. People clearly enjoying themselves. This must be good. By week 3, no discounts were needed. The social proof of the full room had built genuine demand. The crowd that had been engineered became a crowd that was real. The restaurant didn't need to tell anyone it was good. The evidence of other people's choice said it better than any advertisement could. How to use it? Step by step. Step 1. Make the proof visible. Social proof only works when it is seen. Reviews need to be surfaced. Testimonials need to be placed prominently. The fact that others have chosen your offering needs to be immediately apparent, not buried. Step 2. Match the proof to the audience. Social proof is most powerful when it comes from people the target person identifies with. The right testimonial isn't from the most famous person. It's from the most relevant person. A 35-year-old professional is more influenced by the choice of another 35-year-old professional than by a celebrity whose life is nothing like theirs. Step 3. Use specific numbers. Many people have chosen this is weak. 4,700 customers in the past 6 months is strong. Specificity signals real data rather than marketing language. Step 4. Highlight consensus on the specific element in question. If someone is uncertain about quality, show quality reviews. If they're uncertain about reliability, show proof of reliability. Match the social proof precisely to the doubt being experienced. Step 5. Create genuine proof, not manufacture proof. Fake reviews and fabricated testimonials are the short-term version of a long-term disaster. Build real social proof by delivering real value and making it easy for real people to share their experience. The engine runs most powerfully on authentic fuel. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. Before being moved by the behavior of a crowd, ask, is this crowd real? And is it actually made up of people like me? Many forms of social proof are manufactured. Bought reviews, inflated follower counts, selectively displayed testimonials. Also ask whether the crowd's circumstances match yours. 500 people loving a product that was right for them doesn't mean it is right for you. The crowd is a useful signal, but it is not a substitute for your own evaluation. Tactic number 22, the reciprocity bomb. Give first, receive everything. What it is? Reciprocity is the most powerful social force in human civilization. When someone gives us something, a gift, a favor, information, time, care, we feel an immediate and nearly irresistible obligation to give something back. The reciprocity bomb is the strategic application of giving, initiating a cycle of exchange by offering something of genuine value before any ask is made, creating an obligation so natural and so deeply wired that the other person will often give back more than they received, simply to restore the balance. The psychology behind it. Anthropologists consider the norm of reciprocity to be universal across human cultures. No society has been found where giving creates no obligation to return. This universality suggests that reciprocity is not a cultural agreement, but a biological imperative, something so fundamental to cooperative group living that it is embedded in our neural architecture. Robert Cialdini's research on this principle is unambiguous. An uninvited gift or favor produces feelings of obligation that are often disproportionate to the value of the original gesture. In one study, a researcher who bought a subject an unsolicited soda was able to sell that subject raffle tickets worth 5 times the cost of the soda. The subject didn't want the soda, but the obligation was real regardless of desire. This means that the person who gives first, genuinely, thoughtfully, without apparent agenda, holds a powerful and legitimate claim on the other person's sense of obligation. The claim requires no words. It requires no reminders. It operates automatically. Real-life example. A real estate agent named Thomas was trying to break into a new market where he had no existing relationships. Rather than approaching potential clients with pitches, he began a different practice. He spent 3 months writing and distributing, completely free, a detailed monthly report on the local property market, prices, trends, neighborhood data, investment analysis. He sent it to 200 people. He asked for nothing. By month 4, he had received 14 referrals from people on that list. 8 of them became clients. Several had never planned to buy or sell, but they knew someone who was, and they thought of Thomas first, because he was the person who had given them something valuable and asked for nothing. The reciprocity didn't require him to call on the favor. It operated on its own, invisibly, converting his generosity into loyalty that he never had to demand. How to use it? Step by step. Step 1. Give without attaching strings. The reciprocity bomb only works when the gift is unconditional, or at least appears to be. A gift that visibly comes with an agenda feels like a transaction, and transactions produce far weaker obligation than genuine generosity. Step 2. Give something personally relevant. The more tailored the gift to the specific person, the more it shows you paid attention to who they are and what they need, the more powerful the obligation it creates. Generic gifts are forgotten. Personal gifts are felt. Step 3. Give first, consistently. Reciprocity is a practice, not a transaction. The most powerful reciprocity effects accumulate over time through a pattern of giving that builds a deep, felt sense of debt. 1 gift opens a door. 10 gifts, given naturally over time, build a loyalty that is almost impossible to shake. Step 4. Don't keep score visibly. The moment you appear to be tracking what you've given and what you're owed, the social grace of the exchange evaporates and it becomes a ledger. Keep the giving genuine. Keep any expectation of return implicit and patient. Step 5. Make it easy for them to reciprocate. When the time comes to receive, when you make an ask, make it specific and reasonable. A vague, "let me know if you can ever return the favor," produces nothing. A specific, clear ask at the right moment converts accumulated reciprocity into action. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. Not every gift is freely given. When someone is unusually generous toward you, especially someone you don't know well, or someone with something to gain from you, ask yourself what they might be building toward. You are not required to fulfill an obligation that was created without your informed consent. Receiving a gift does not automatically mean you owe the giver what they eventually ask for. You can receive graciously and still evaluate any subsequent request on its own merits. Obligation is powerful, but it is not unlimited, and it is not unconditional. Tactic number 23, the authority signal. Make them feel they're following expertise, not following you. What it is: people are extraordinarily willing to defer to authority, to follow the direction of those they perceive as expert, credentialed, or in possession of superior knowledge. The authority signal is the art of establishing and communicating genuine expertise in ways that make your guidance feel less like persuasion and more like obvious, natural truth coming from a trusted source. When you are the authority in someone's mind, they don't resist your direction. They seek it, the psychology behind it. Stanley Milgram's famous obedience experiments demonstrated something profoundly disturbing about human nature. Ordinary people will follow the instructions of a perceived authority figure to a degree that most of us would find unimaginable until we see the data. The experiments weren't about cruelty. They were about the depth of the authority reflex. The white coat, the official title, the confident manner. These signals override personal judgment with frightening reliability. The authority signal works because navigating the full complexity of modern life, medical decisions, financial choices, legal questions, technical problems, requires more knowledge than any individual can acquire. We have no choice but to defer, selectively, to people we believe know more than we do. The question is not whether you will follow authority. The question is which authority signals you will respond to. And those signals can be engineered. Real life example. Two financial advisors were competing for the same clients. Both were genuinely competent. One dressed well, spoke confidently, and handed out a polished brochure at initial meetings. The other, Michael, did something different. Before every initial meeting, Michael sent a brief, specific piece of analysis relevant to that particular client situation. Not generic, not promotional. Analysis, real, substantive, expert-level thinking about their specific circumstances. He asked for nothing in response. When they met, the client was already in a particular relationship with Michael. This is a person who knows my situation, thinks about it seriously, and is operating at a level of expertise I cannot replicate myself. The conversation was not one between equal parties considering options. It was between a professional and someone seeking his guidance. Conversion rate. Michael's was more than double his competitors. He didn't need to claim authority. The analysis had established it before he walked in the door. How to use it? Step by step. Step 1. Demonstrate expertise. Don't announce it. Telling people you are an expert is far less effective than showing them evidence that you are. Analysis, insight, specific knowledge applied to their situation. These demonstrate authority in ways that titles and credentials alone cannot. Step 2. Publish your thinking. Written ideas, articles, reports, frameworks, even detailed emails are powerful authority signals because they require knowledge to produce. They create a record, and they can be shared. Sharing expertise at scale multiplies the authority signal. Step 3. Use the language of your field with precision. Expertise has a language, and fluency in its signals belonging to the expert class. Not jargon for jargon's sake, but precise, appropriate technical language that demonstrates real depth. The right word at the right moment carries authority that 20 ordinary words cannot. Step 4. Reference your experience specifically. Not, I have years of experience. That is a claim. But the last time I saw a market structure like this was in 2018, and what followed was, that is evidence. Specific experience, cited precisely, signals real authority. Step 5. Acknowledge the limits of your expertise. Counterintuitively, naming what you don't know dramatically increases trust in what you say you do know. It signals honesty and intellectual integrity, qualities that genuine experts consistently display and that pretenders almost never do. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. The authority signal is among the most easily manufactured of all influence mechanisms. A title, a uniform, a confident tone, an impressive sounding credential. None of these guarantee actual expertise. Before deferring to an authority figure on any significant decision, ask, where does this authority actually come from? What is the track record? What do independent sources say? Deference to genuine expertise is wisdom. Deference to the performance of expertise is one of the most reliable paths to being systematically misled. Tactic number 24, the future memory. Make them live the decision before they make it. What it is, every decision a person makes is, at its root, a prediction. If I do this, I will feel a certain way. The future memory is the practice of vividly constructing that future emotional state in language so concrete and sensory that the other person begins to experience it before they have made the decision, making the predicted positive outcome feel already real, already close, already theirs to lose if they choose otherwise. The psychology behind it. The brain does not process vivid imagination and actual experience through completely separate systems. Research in neuroscience shows that mentally simulating an event activates many of the same neural pathways as actually experiencing it. This is why visualization improves athletic performance. It is why phobias are triggered by imagination. It is why reading a novel can produce genuine physiological emotional responses. When you help someone construct a vivid mental simulation of the positive future state that follows their desired action, you are not giving them a description. You're giving them a preview, one that the brain encodes with some of the emotional weight of actual experience. And something that has been previewed emotionally feels far less like a risk and far more like a path home. Real life example. A travel agent named Carmen was trying to close a booking with a couple who were hesitating. The trip was expensive, the timing wasn't perfect, and they kept saying they'd think about it. Carmen stopped talking about the itinerary. She stopped discussing prices and logistics. Instead, she said, imagine it's the second morning. You've both slept the first night off. You're having coffee on the terrace, and there's no agenda, just the sound of the water and know where you have to be. And you look at each other, and one of you says, we needed this. That moment, that specific feeling of having actually done it, that's what you're deciding about right now. The couple was quiet. Then the wife looked at her husband and said, simply, book it. Carmen hadn't added a new argument. She had simply made them live the moment they were working so hard to postpone. Once they felt it, even in imagination, not booking felt like a loss. How to use it? Step by step. Step 1. Identify the core, emotional payoff of your desired action. Not the functional benefit, the emotional one. Not, you'll save money, but you'll feel secure. Not, it's a great trip, but you'll feel like yourselves again. The emotion is what the future memory will carry. Step 2. Build the scene in sensory detail. Time of day, sounds, physical sensations, specific people present. The more concrete and sensory the details, the more the imagination engages and the more the brain's emotional systems activate. Abstractions don't move people. Specific scenes do. Step 3. Put the person inside the scene, not outside it. Say you, not people. Place them physically in the moment. You're sitting, not imagine someone sitting. The first person, present tense, framing collapses the psychological distance between now and the imagined future. Step 4. Include the moment of relief or arrival. The most powerful emotional beat is the moment when they realize it was the right decision. The exhale, the we did it, the settled certainty that they chose correctly. Building that moment into the future memory makes the imagined relief feel already earned. Step 5. Let the scene fade naturally, then be quiet. Don't explain it. Don't follow it with a pitch. Let the image sit. Then let silence do what silence does. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. When someone begins painting a very vivid, very emotionally specific picture of your future after making a particular choice, especially a choice that benefits them, slow down. The pleasure of the imagined future is real, even though the future is not. That pleasure creates genuine motivation to close the gap by making the choice. Pause and ask, is this emotional vision accurate, or is it being constructed for me? Then evaluate the actual, concrete terms of the decision on their own merits, separate from the imagined feeling. Tactic number 25, the last impression lock. End every interaction at the peak. What it is, memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction. And that reconstruction is shaped disproportionately by two moments: the peak emotional moment of an experience and the very last moment. The last impression lock is the deliberate practice of engineering the final moments of every interaction so that what people remember about you, about the conversation, about the experience, is exactly what you need them to remember. The psychology behind it. Daniel Kahneman's research on the peak end rule established one of the most important and counterintuitive findings in behavioral psychology. People's remembered experience of an event is determined almost entirely by the peak moment and the ending, not by the overall average or duration. This means a conversation that was challenging throughout but ended warmly will be remembered more positively than one that was pleasant throughout but ended awkwardly. The implication for influence is profound. How you leave matters more than almost anything else. The last impression isn't just one moment among many. It is the moment that overwrites all the others in memory. Control the ending, and you control the memory. Control the memory, and you control the relationship. Real life example. A senior executive named Caroline had a reputation for meetings that ran over time, ended in confusion, and left people unsure of what had been decided. Her assistant noted that people left her meetings with less energy than they arrived with. She made one change. She began ending every meeting, regardless of how it had gone, with 3 deliberate elements: a clear statement of what had been decided, specific acknowledgement of one person in the room by name and contribution, and a forward-looking statement that gave the group a sense of momentum. The content of her meetings didn't change. The culture around them changed completely within 2 months. People began arriving more prepared, more energized. They looked forward to meetings with Caroline. What they were responding to was memory. The memory of her meetings was now positive, because the ending was positive, and the ending overwrote whatever had come before it. How to use it? Step by step. Step 1. Never let important interactions end by accident. Most conversations end because someone has to leave, not because they have reached a satisfying conclusion. Begin consciously designing your exits rather than letting them happen to you. Step 2. End on warmth, clarity, or forward momentum. The best last impressions leave people feeling one of 3 things: warmly connected, clearly resolved, or energized about what comes next. Identify which ending serves this particular interaction and engineer it. Step 3. Acknowledge the person specifically, ending with a sincere, specific acknowledgement of the other person. Their contribution, their patience, their insight leaves them feeling valued. Feeling valued at the end of an interaction is a powerful positive memory anchor. Step 4. Give them something to carry forward. An idea, a question to think about, a specific next step, something that extends the interaction beyond its physical end. People carry conversations that gave them something to think about. They forget conversations that closed cleanly and left nothing behind. Step 5. Be the one who ends it. In most interactions, the person who controls the ending controls the memory. Be intentional about that role. Don't drift toward the end. Steer toward it, deliberately at the right moment. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. Notice when someone who may not have had your best interest throughout a conversation suddenly becomes unusually warm and generous in the final moments. A strong positive ending can overwrite a genuinely problematic interaction in memory, and someone skilled at this knows it. After any significant conversation, take time to evaluate the entire interaction, not just how you felt walking out. The glow of a good ending is real. So, is whatever happened before it. Tactic number 26. The invisible push. Use their environment to change their behavior. What it is? The most invisible form of influence doesn't operate through words or relationships at all. It operates through environment, through the physical and social context within which people make their choices. The invisible push is the deliberate design of environments that make desired behaviors the path of least resistance. No argument, no persuasion, simply a context in which the choice you want someone to make feels natural, easy, obvious. While the choice you don't want them to make requires additional effort, they are unlikely to invest. The psychology behind it. Behavioral economics has established beyond reasonable doubt that the architecture of choice, the way options are presented, arranged, and contextualized, has an enormous effect on what people choose, independent of the objective merits of those options. People take the default option far more often than any deliberate analysis would predict. They choose what is immediately visible over what requires searching. They choose what others around them appear to be choosing. They choose what is framed as the normal or standard path. This means that you don't always need to persuade someone to make a different choice. Sometimes you simply need to redesign the environment so that the choice you want is the default, the visible, the frictionless path, and the alternative requires deliberate, effortful deviation. Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein called this nudging, and it is used in everything from national public health policy to corporate cafeteria design to digital product interfaces. It is quiet, constant, and extraordinarily effective. Real-life example. A company was struggling to increase participation in its employee retirement savings plan. HR had sent emails. They had held information sessions. They had distributed pamphlets. Participation remained stubbornly low. A behavioral economist consulted. Her recommendation was simple: change the default. Instead of requiring employees to opt into the plan, she recommended making enrollment automatic. Employees were enrolled by default and could opt out if they chose. The content of the plan didn't change. The financial incentives didn't change. Only the default changed. Participation went from 40% to 87% within one enrollment cycle. No one had been persuaded. No one had been pressured. The environment had simply been redesigned so that the desired behavior required no effort, and the undesired behavior required a deliberate, conscious act of deviation that most people never got around to making. How to use it? Step by step. Step 1. Identify the behavior you want to make more likely. What do you want people to do more of? Engage with. Choose. Begin. This is your target behavior. Step 2. Make the target behavior the default. Wherever possible, structure the choice environment so that the target behavior requires no active decision. It happens unless the person actively chooses otherwise. Defaults are extraordinarily powerful. Step 3. Reduce friction for the desired choice. Every step, every form, every decision required between intention and action reduces the probability of action. Remove as many steps as possible from the path to the desired behavior. Step 4. Add friction to the undesired choice. Conversely, adding steps, delay, or inconvenience to undesired behaviors significantly reduces their frequency, not through prohibition, but through the natural human tendency to choose the path of least resistance. Step 5. Make the desired choice visible and normal. What is visible seems normal. What seems normal seems correct. Place the desired choice in prominent, default positions. Surround it with evidence that others are making it. The environment teaches people what to expect, and people tend to meet expectations. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. Begin to notice the architecture of choices in your own life. When you find yourself choosing something, ask, was this choice designed to be easy? Is there a default that I accepted without examining? Digital products are perhaps the most sophisticated practitioners of this art. Every interface decision shapes behavior in ways that serve the designer's interests, not necessarily yours. Opt out of defaults that you haven't consciously evaluated. Choose your choices. Tactic number 27, the long game. Plant seeds you won't harvest for years. What it is? Every tactic in this book can be used in a single conversation. The long game operates on a different timescale entirely. It is the practice of investing in relationships, reputation, and goodwill without any immediate expectation of return. Building, patiently and consistently, a foundation of trust, value, and presence so deep that when the moment comes, and it always comes, the influence you can exercise is not just powerful, but automatic. The long game is the most powerful form of influence ever devised, and it is the rarest because most people are too impatient to play it. The psychology behind it. Short-term influence tactics work by triggering specific psychological mechanisms in specific moments. They are effective, and they have their place, but they operate against a fundamental limitation. They require active deployment. They require you to be present, to act, to trigger. The long game operates differently. It builds something that works passively, a deep reservoir of trust, perceived value, and relationship history that generates influence without any specific act of deployment. The people who have experienced your consistent generosity, your reliability, your genuine interest in their well-being over months and years don't need to be persuaded when you eventually need something. They already want to help you. The influence has been accumulating continuously, invisibly, at compound interest. Robert Cialdini calls the people who do this naturally persuaders. They build the conditions for influence long before any specific persuasion attempt is made. Their requests don't feel like requests. They feel like natural expressions of a relationship that everyone already values. Real-life example. In any industry, there are people who seem, from the outside, to have almost magical ease. Opportunities come to them. People call them first. Deals close before they're fully pitched. Talented people want to work for them. Investors back them. The world seems to bend in their direction. When you look closely at these people, when you trace the relationships rather than just the outcomes, you almost always find the same thing. They have been playing the long game for years or decades. They remember birthdays not because they have a CRM that tells them to, but because they genuinely paid attention. They sent congratulatory messages at meaningful moments. They made introductions that helped others, asking nothing. They showed up when people were struggling. They remembered the name of the child who was sick and asked about her 3 months later when nobody expected them to remember. These behaviors compound. Over years, they build something that cannot be manufactured in a single conversation. A genuine reputation as a person who cares, who delivers, who can be trusted. And that reputation creates influence on a scale that no individual tactic can approach. There is no shortcut to the long game. That is why so few people play it. And that is precisely why those who do play it win so completely. How to use it, step by step. Step 1. Invest in relationships before you need them. The single most important rule of the long game. Never approach a relationship only when you want something. The people who call only when they need a favor are cataloged as users. The people who call, write, connect, and give consistently, regardless of immediate need, are welcomed. Step 2. Give with no visible expectation of return. Long game giving is unconditional in its presentation. It may not be unconditional in your heart. You may know that it builds something over time, but the other person must experience it as freely given. The moment your giving feels transactional, the account closes. Step 3. Remember what matters to them. Demonstrate, over time, that you hold their reality in your mind, their family, their challenges, their ambitions, their history. People are deeply moved by being remembered accurately because it is so rare. Memory, deployed at the right moments, is among the most powerful signals of genuine care. Step 4. Show up in the hard moments. The long game accelerates dramatically when you show up when it's difficult, when someone is failing, grieving, struggling, or doubted. These are the moments that are remembered permanently and that build loyalty that nothing can shake. Step 5. Be patient, completely, genuinely patient. The long game requires that you release the timeline. You cannot play it while quietly tracking when the return will come. The investment must be genuine. The patience must be real. And the return, when it comes, in the form it chooses, on the timeline it selects, will exceed anything you could have planned for. Warning: how to recognize when it's used against you. It is genuinely difficult to recognize the long game being played on you, because its very nature is that it looks exactly like genuine friendship and care. The uncomfortable truth is that some of what feels like real connection in your life may be strategic investment. The way to distinguish between them is not through suspicion. That destroys real connection without identifying the false kind. Instead, notice whether the relationship is reciprocal. Notice whether the person is ever vulnerable, ever needing, or only ever giving. Notice whether their interest in you is consistent across different contexts, or concentrated in areas that benefit them. Genuine long-game players become genuine friends over time. Strategic long-game players reveal themselves eventually through the nature and timing of what they eventually ask for. OUTRO, the ethical line, power with responsibility. You have now read 27 tactics for understanding, reading, and influencing human behavior. You have seen how the human mind works at its most fundamental and most vulnerable levels. You have been given a map of the psychological architecture that underlies virtually every decision every person around you will ever make. That is an extraordinary thing to hold. And so, before you close this book, there is something we must look at directly. The question you should be asking. If you have been reading carefully, and I believe you have, then somewhere in the last 27 chapters, a question has been sitting quietly in the back of your mind. Is this ethical? It's the right question, and it deserves a real answer, not a dismissal. Here is mine. The tactics in this book are not ethical or unethical in themselves. They are instruments. A knife is an instrument. It can prepare food to feed a family. It can cause harm. The knife has no moral character. The hand that holds it does. Every tactic in this book can be used in the service of genuine value. To help someone make a decision that is actually good for them. To lead a team toward outcomes that are genuinely better. To build relationships that are genuinely enriching. To communicate truth more effectively. To advocate for things that matter. Every single one of them can also be used to deceive, exploit, manipulate, and harm. The difference is not in the tactic. It is in the intent. And it is in one critical test. The test. Before you use any of the tactics in this book on another person, ask yourself one question. If they could see exactly what I'm doing and why, would they feel betrayed? Or would they simply think I understood them well? If the answer is the latter, if your influence is in the service of something that genuinely benefits them, even if the mechanism is invisible, then you're operating in the space of legitimate, ethical influence. You are a skilled communicator, a perceptive leader, a thoughtful friend or partner or negotiator. If the answer is the former, if exposure would produce betrayal, then you are operating in the space of manipulation. And manipulation, however sophisticated, has a fundamental flaw. It is built on a foundation that cannot bear the weight of real relationship, real trust, or real time. Because here is what 27 chapters of psychological tactics cannot teach you, and what experience will eventually make undeniable. The most powerful influence in the long run is simply being a person worth following, not a skilled manipulator, not a master of psychological triggers, a person who does what they say, who cares genuinely, who tells the truth when the truth is costly, who shows up in the hard moments without being asked, who treats people, in all contexts, with basic, consistent dignity. That is not a tactic. That is character. And character compounds over time the way no technique can. What to do with what you know. Use what you've learned to understand people more deeply. Their needs, their fears, their wounds, their desires. Use it to communicate more clearly, to lead more effectively, to negotiate more skillfully, and to build relationships that are genuinely mutual. Use it to protect yourself, because these tactics are being used on you daily by people who may not have your interests at heart. Knowledge of the mechanism is your defense against it. You can now see the frame being set, the anchor being dropped, the identity being mirrored. Seeing it gives you a choice where before there was none. Use it to give people what they actually need, not just what serves you. Because the deepest application of psychological knowledge isn't influence over others. It is the ability to meet people at the level of their actual humanity, to speak to what is genuinely real in them, and to offer something worth receiving. And use it carefully. Use it with awareness of the power it represents. Use it knowing that the people you will practice it on are full, complex, vulnerable human beings, not targets, not problems to be solved, not obstacles to be maneuvered around. They are people, just like you. A final word. The title of this book is Mind Trigger, The implication is that the mind can be triggered, that behavior can be initiated from outside through the right stimulus, applied at the right moment, in the right way. That is true. This book has proven it, chapter by chapter. But here is what is equally true, and what I want you to carry with you. Your mind can be triggered too. You are not exempt from any of the psychology you have just read about. You are susceptible to all of it. The hunger maps, the fear frequencies, the commitment ladders, the future memories. Every tactic that works on others works on you. The reading of this book has not made you immune. It has made you aware. And awareness is the beginning of genuine agency. The ability to notice when a trigger is being pulled and to decide, consciously, whether to respond to it. That space between trigger and response, that small, quiet moment of awareness, is where freedom lives. Expand it, protect it, and use everything you've learned in the service of something worth influencing people toward. The world belongs to those who understand it. Now you understand it a little better. Use that wisely. End.